So today we have some colleagues from Atlantic States Legal Foundation. And they're going to tell us an awful lot about agroforestry and this project and seek to get some input from us all. So welcome.
Great, thank you, Kate. So my name is Paul Harris. I'm the program director of Atlantic States Legal Foundation, and I'm here with my colleague Dylan Seaver, who is the executive director right there. By the way, there is a sign-in sheet. If you would please sign that at some point just to let us know that you attended. You can also leave your email address if you want to get more information or be up to date on the project. That'd be great. So we partnered with SUNY Oswego to do it under the GLRI program, which is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And this is the actual official title of our project, Food Forests to Improve Water Quality and Build Community Resilience. But that's the official academic title, but I think we're gonna go into a little bit more detail about what we're gonna be doing. And we have some exciting plans for the campus and for getting some trees in the ground. But just a little bit of background about who we are. Atlantic States Legal Foundation was founded in 1982, and we've been doing this for quite a few decades now. Basically, we are a small environmental nonprofit. We've mostly been working in doing water quality protection projects. And when we, our claim to fame is initiating the sewage cleanup of Onondaga Lake back in 1988. And when we did that, we, long story short, is that we ended up, as party to the lawsuit, we ended up being assigned the role of technical assistance provider. And one of the stipulations for Onondaga County to reduce the sewage to CSO outputs was to incorporate green infrastructure into the plan. So you can see here in the image, this is a rain garden that we actually own in Syracuse. And we assisted the county for many years with this green infrastructure. And along the way, we basically realized that there's a lot more we could be doing with these green infrastructure sites. For example, adding trees, planting trees, because very often they were done on, and they continue to be done on vacant lots. And there's a lot of room on these lots. And we thought, well, why don't we try to get multiple benefits from these vacant lots? So we started getting into the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which is a tree planting grant, and started thinking that, well, one of the benefits we could be adding to these tree plantings is food production, especially in neighborhoods that are already experiencing blight. So that's kind of the background of how we went from litigation for against Onondaga County for violation of the Clean Water Act into planting trees today. But we don't really do litigation anymore, despite our name, which can oftentimes fool people. We're not really a legal foundation in that sense anymore. We're really more of a bridging organization, meaning that we cover gaps that exist between community groups and municipalities and other partners, and access to resources like grants and funding, and even sometimes knowledge gaps, research, et cetera. So really, what we really are is a technical assistance provider on environmental projects. We've been doing a lot of work in Oswego County lately, especially over the past year. We just finished up a Department of Health funded wellness grant, working with quite a few partners, including SUNY Oswego and Rice Creek. But we've also been in other locations in the county, including Fulton and Pulaski. And we did a series of workshops last year where we talked about a lot of the same content that we're talking about today, which is agroforestry and tree planting and the benefits of nearby nature. And this is actually an image of from one of our tree plantings, our closeout event last September in Fulton in Van Buren Park. So what is this program? The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative goes back to 2010, and it's an interagency and multi-agency initiative to improve and sustain the water quality of the Great Lakes as a resource for all. The Great Lakes are a source of drinking water for 40 million people, and 10% of the United States population does get its drinking water from the Great Lakes, including communities around here. Even going down to like the Syracuse area, there are some communities that do get some of their drinking water from Lake Ontario. So it's a very important resource. And on the official logo, you can see where we are located in Oswego County. So in a nutshell, what are we doing with this project? Well, it's a stormwater mitigation project first and foremost, and that's why the program exists. It's being funded by the USDA Forest Service. So we plan on planting approximately 400 native trees and shrubs at 2 locations in Oswego County. One of those locations is here on campus. The other one is St. Luke's Assisted Living Facility, which is right on the outskirts of town. Most of the trees will be here on campus, about 300 of them or so, and shrubs. This will have quite an impact on the stormwater capture on campus. There's a lot of impervious space like parking lots and buildings that all creates runoff, and the runoff goes into the lake eventually. So within the first 20 years, this is averaged out. Our planting will capture about 50,000 gallons annually of stormwater. And then many decades down the road, when the trees are fully grown and hopefully there's a relatively low mortality rate, those trees could be capturing 250 to 500,000 gallons per year. And that's a pretty conservative estimate. It could actually be much more than that, even well over 1 million gallons a year of stormwater being captured, which is great. That's, 1 million gallons of stormwater contaminated with runoff from parking lots and from lawns, pesticides, rooftops, etc., that are not going into the lake. So that's the main goal of this project, but we have some other dimensions as well. We want to engage the community and get students, residents, and just the community in general involved in this project as much as possible because there is a significant outreach component, and projects like, especially tree planting projects, are really only successful if there is significant community support and buy-in from the users. The fun part of this project is the food forest aspect, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But a big dimension of this entire thing is to not only plant trees for stormwater mitigation, but also add a food forest that is accessible to the public, to students here on campus and everybody else, and basically whoever is able to access them by walking through the space, using the space in any way, shape, or form. And the agroforestry element, like I said, I'll get into that in just a moment. And of course, we have another goal, which is to increase the size of Centennial Arboretum and bring it to a new level of accreditation, which is level 2. And this will involve, the part that we're going to cover is planting more trees, but I'll get into that in just a moment too. That's pretty exciting. Just to give an idea of the Great Lakes Basin. So sometimes we don't realize, what exactly is, when we're talking about like the Great Lakes, what exactly is a watershed or a basin, or why, if I do something in Syracuse, which is, 30 or 40 miles away, it's going to affect something in Lake Ontario. And that's because in a watershed, when you have runoff events, that runoff will eventually make its way downstream into whatever, the Great Lake, in our case, Lake Ontario. So you can see here that the basin is quite extensive, and in New York State, it's almost like about 1/3 of the state, going all the way down into the southern tier and into Pennsylvania. Just a quick overview of our partners for this project. Not only are we working with SUNY Oswego, but we're also working with St. Francis, Bishop's Commons, and St. Luke's. And also Catholic Charities of Onondaga County is working with us to do some of the planting. That'll probably mostly be in St. Luke's. And the funder, of course, is the US Forest Service. So just doing a little bit more of a dive into some of the the goals of the project and where we're coming from. Like I said, the main purpose is to mitigate stormwater. So these graphics just illustrate pretty simply how trees are basically little environmental cleaning machines. And not just for stormwater, but also for carbon sequestration. And trees also remove volatile compounds out of the air. And the way that they help us with the stormwater aspect is by uptaking excessive runoff through the roots, but also intercepting precipitation on foliage. And actually that can be quite a lot of water that's intercepted during a rainstorm event just from the foliage alone. So into the fun part, the agroforestry element. I won't go too much into depth about the different types of agroforestry and a lot of background information on that. But in a nutshell, agroforestry is the integration of woody plants into agricultural systems. Again, in a nutshell. There are many different definitions that people have come up with, but I think that's a pretty good, simple one. And by woody plants, we mean trees and shrubs. This is something that we've been really looking at in recent decades, especially as we begin to question the impacts of commodity monoculture agriculture on the environment in general, definitely on water quality. And one of the agroecological solutions that people are looking at is integrating agroforestry systems into our agricultural landscapes in different ways. So these are the 6 types: alley cropping, forest farming, windbreaks, silvopasture, and riparian buffers. The one that we are focusing on for this project is the one in the middle, the food forest. And this is probably the most recently added to the canon of agroforestry systems, and maybe sometimes a little bit controversial, but that's neither here nor there. And it's, mostly done in urban areas, and that's typically what the type of the type of agroforestry that we implement in all of our projects. And the image in the middle is from Van Buren Park in Fulton, the same place in the beginning of the presentation where we had the image from our tree planting last year. So what exactly is a food forest? It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't like to overcomplicate things, but typically it's a planting of a diversity of different types of food-producing trees. Emphasis on the word diversity, multiple species and varieties. It derives from originates from practices in tropical areas, from something called a tropical home garden, where this was done on a more subsistence level, but it's been applied in temperate agroforestry pretty successfully in urban areas.
So what kinds of food trees did you plant in Florida?
Oh, well, actually, I'll get to that in just a moment, but one of our favorites is pawpaws. We plant that a lot, but yeah, I'll review some of the species in just a moment. 2 images here. So there's different ways to configure this. On the left is an image from about 15 years ago. This was one of our first projects in Syracuse. This was done a little bit more like a conventional orchard with apples and peaches. And those trees are not fully grown today, and this space is used by the community. And on the right is a more recent project. This was in, like I said, Van Buren Park. And I guess you could say this configuration is more arboretum-like, and done in a way that tries to emulate more closely the local forest characteristics. And that's the inset right there. That's pawpaw that was actually on the trees just this past fall. And during one of our events, we did a foraging walk, and folks got to see the pawpaws and pick them. And part of what we do is raise awareness about these food forests, not only plant them, but let people know they exist so that they can access them and get benefit from them. So for this project, I would say that the the Fulton example is more closely resembles what we're aiming for. We're also limited, by the way, to just native species, which is not a problem. But that's one of the grant restrictions. So like I mentioned earlier, another goal is to expand Centennial Arboretum. And Kristen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have approximately 40 varieties of species or cultivars here. Yeah, approximately. And to get to that level 2 status, we need to get to 100, right? So approximately 60 more species, cultivars, or varieties. And those can be different cultivars of the same species. That's one of our goals. This is from, it appears from, what I looked into that the Centennial Arboretum is the only level 1 arboretum really around. There don't appear to be any more in the county or even the Syracuse area. And there are other requirements as well for this increase in accreditation. Some management and programming requirements, publicity requirements, but that's, we're really tackling the first one, which is pretty big. And you can see some examples here of other level 2 arboretums. So what other benefits do we get from a project like this besides the stormwater? And, this list here really is, in a general sense, benefits we get from trees. If you had attended our DOH workshop last year, which some of you may have, this might look familiar. We talked about how trees really can contribute to like relieving anxiety, stress. On college campuses, that's particularly useful. We do know that trees can, there's something called forest bathing, which I'm sure you've heard of. The trees actually can emit compounds that calm us down. The most, an obvious one with the food forest is nutrition and medicine. They feed us, especially, and if we have, a nearby food forest, that's very convenient. Trees help us clean the air and water. Not just through the stormwater retention and mitigation that I mentioned earlier, but also by removing volatile compounds from the air.
Yeah. Probably you're spending a lot of time with a friendly crowd. We all love trees. If anybody doesn't put their hand up and throw a rock at it. But what we would really love to know, what I would love to know, if you plant 10 trees of a certain type, a food type, a regular type, plant 10, how many of those will survive? Sorry about the sophisticated, deep question, but appreciate it.
Just so you're asking about like mortality rate?
Yeah, but how many will survive?
I would say if you got if you have a 10% mortality rate, 90% survival, that's pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is that what you're usually getting? Does it matters how you plant your tree and dig a deep enough hole?
It matters how you plant it, but just as important is during the first few years, the maintenance and care of the trees. Okay. Super important, yeah. And we'll get into that in just a little bit.
I'm sorry to get that.
Yeah, so other benefits, habitat and food for wildlife. We've been talking about some restoration projects here on campus, and this meshes with that quite well. Social interaction, exercise, encouraging people to use a space. Trees help us with that by inviting people in. Community beautification, psychological and spiritual connection and sense of place. And when I say spiritual, I mean in the broad sense, having a sort of sense of awe or connection to a place. And I know that recently, I believe the college community is trying to do some sort of place building or starting new traditions. And this is something we've discussed earlier. So this might fit very well with that. And of course, from the perspective of expanding the Arboretum, new research opportunities and germplasm preservation. An Arboretum is oftentimes one of the only places you can find a lot of different types of interesting germplasm that is useful for plant improvement, breeding, and clonal propagation and that sort of thing. So jumping into the planting plan, this is a draft planting plan. We haven't actually gotten to the point of assigning species yet, but this gives you an idea of where we're thinking of planting trees. There are generally two themes here. The red circles are more like landscape trees, mostly planted around or on the side, alongside driveways and walkways. And the green areas are the expansion of the Centennial Arboretum. Also, areas that could potentially add to the permaculture garden and the alver that exists near Cinnamon Hall. So Dylan and I were here last week, and it actually has been very useful to see the campus covered in snow, because we were able to see where like snow is being piled, how deep it gets, and how this could potentially impact particularly the young trees after they're first planted. And you know, it might affect some of the positioning of the trees. We don't want them to get crushed by snow. And there are other ways to deal with that, like snow fencing and flagging the trees as well. But yeah, so we just took a preliminary look at some of these other conflicts that we came across, and we'll tweak the planting plan accordingly. Are there any comments or questions about the master plan here?
I would like to say too.
Yes.
One of the impacts of snow plows. On Sheldon Avenue, I see the impacts of snow plows on the shore trees. That's something to bear in mind.
Damaging the trees?
What?
Damaging the trees?
Damaging the trees.
Yeah, definitely. I guess there's a certain degree of cooperation maybe with the plow drivers. We could have like flags in certain areas that are pretty tall, and they can see, don't pile stuff here. So,
Well, this is a great slide. In the area along the shoreline, what type of trees are you gonna want for a windbreak? Is that something to be considered? I know you didn't specify, you haven't determined type yet, but is it an obvious choice when you're using trees for a weather break?
actually,
Like B, the area B area, for example.
yeah. Actually, the windbreak question is something that we wanted to ask folks here tonight. Is that something you see a need for? At St. Luke's, they definitely do. It's very windy there, and they were happy to hear us suggest windbreak plantings. But folks who use the campus every day, is it generally pretty windy here from being next to the lake? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there are certainly some options for that, for trying to put in a windbreak. And that is one of the agroforestry types too, if you recall from the earlier slide. Yes.
The scope of the project, is it solely on the main part of campus, or is there any consideration for the South Athletic fields?
I think it's primarily the main part of campus, but I mean, we're still pretty open.
This is very much just a draft of work in progress, if you will. So, I mean, part of what we want to figure out tonight is planting locations, species preference. So that would be an important consideration if you guys think that's an area that needs trees. We could definitely do that.
It's a wide open area on campus. It could be as impacted by snow removal on campus than other places. And it probably could be great for some sort of wind protection and shelter as well in some of those areas.
Yeah, that's a great consideration, because when we were walking campus last week, we noticed the snow, of course, and some of the trees we'd be planting are 5-gallon trees. They've established themselves a little bit, but they still need a lot of help being buried in the snow, unless they're very hardy.
There used to be a stand of pines along Washington Boulevard near the Shimon. And those trees were very much affected by the winds here. Were basically at 90 degrees because of the same things.
Okay. Okay. I'm familiar with the area.
Yeah.
We can connect after. so we can
Section
start
B
working on
and
that.
C is totally exposed to the wind.
Mhm.
Those are gonna be trees that are gonna be
They have to be
stabilized
very
or something.
Yep.
And even like where D is, because I work at the library, and there's been a couple of large tree damage areas because of the coming off of the lake through the parking lot and towards the convocations of the building right here. There's a nice open area where sometimes there's been some very large tree damage that's going on.
Okay.
Where a lot of those circles are just to like the east of D.
Right. Some tree damage, you said due
Yeah.
to wind?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the first site you said was the Southwest Athletic Fields?
Yeah, I think that's down, right.
Yeah, you can see the track in the.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, bottom one.
Can I ask you, CF, those are all dorms. To the left of that. And the trees behind those dorms, between the lake and those dorms, a lot of them have been cut down to the pines that have been removed.
Because they die.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why, that is not an area that might be suitable.
It might be an area, I didn't answer that. That's a good point.
You know, if you walk behind these dorms right on the lake shore, you'll see the remnant, the stump of a lot of trees that died and they've been taken down over the last couple of years.
Do you guys know what species they
I believe they're Austrian pines.
Austrian?
But that area is also subject to very high wind.
Very,
So we'll,
in fact, I think if wind consideration could be one of the priorities
one of the biggest.
on that whole area there, that would improve life on campus, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you think it's going to be priorities, probably wind, snow, probably below that.
I don't see erosion. It would make a difference in terms of erosion if you could put the coastline.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
Snow is not such an issue. Wind is so bad there
the wind is.
that often you could have,
You
you know,
could walk there.
2 feet of snow every place else, and you could walk there without, on the grass, because the wind just blows it right off. When the wind's coming from the lake.
Okay. That's gonna be actually a neighbor consideration.
Any other comments before I move on? And we'll have a set, some time afterwards to keep talking, so.
There is one question. Are you planning on planting trees based on the trees of similar kind in the area, or are you going to be planting a first set of species?
We're restricted to only planting native species, so yeah, we're gonna be planting only natives. Some of those will be cultivars or grafted cultivars, like some of the pawpaws, probably focused more in the arboretum. Versus the trees more along the shore and the outskirts of campus would be all native species that would be found in the region, yeah.
Would you, at least on several parts of campus, there's a pretty diverse set of mycorrhizal fungi that bloom each year from the pine trees on West Campus rather. Are you looking to see planting trees on West Campus in a way that would let that mycorrhizal fungus interact with those species, or are you mostly planting trees based on other considerations?
That is not a consideration we really looked at, but you said it's on West Campus. Is that an experiment station of some kind or
No,
plots?
there's just a natural mycorrhizal species of bogie. It's edible, it's lovely, and it grows with the pine trees that grow there. And it's prolific. They produce hundreds each spring, but they only grow in that acidic soil. And so planting trees that might alter that could eventually prevent this, which wouldn't really hurt anybody, but I guess people who like to eat.
No, it's good to know. That's good information. And you said that was on the West Campus?
Yeah, that's on West Campus by Seneca, but it's visible on any part of campus with with substantial pine trees
Yeah,
in a stand together.
is that close to A sort of on the map here? Or-
Yeah, that would be, that's one of the places they go, but it's almost anywhere on West Campus
Mhm.
near that lagoon where there's pine trees and there are, of course, other tree species.
Yeah,
I think they're, being big behind the lakeside dorms too.
Oh, they grow all over.
maybe we could choose species with that in mind that might actually contribute to that community. So while we're talking about species, um, we do have probably quite an extensive list, and this is just like a sampler platter. This is not an exhaustive list, what I'm showing you here by any stretch. But these are the types of trees we're thinking about from the perspective of landscape trees. We do have, for example, this idea of maybe contributing somewhat to the alver beds. And, you know, like planting bur oak nearby would be something we would think about. In that case, we're also thinking about future resilience and the possibility that there may be longer periods of drought. Oaks would be a great choice in that situation. We're thinking about things like maybe some winter interest, you know, river birch would be great for that. And these are all native, you know, and they all produce products that would be considered basically edible or something you could eat or medicinal. White oaks are, out of all of the oak species, white oaks are the most edible. All acorns have to be processed to remove the tannins, but white oaks require the least processing, so that would be suitable for a food forest. And for the fruiting trees and shrubs, we've got some exciting ideas for that as well. Now, there are pawpaws already planted in the Arboretum, and we'd like to add to that with quite a few other cultivars and varieties. On the left here is a pawpaw from Fulton, Van Buren Park. And the fruit here that you see in the picture, this is actually from our office, or now our old office. We've since moved, but we have several pawpaw trees planted in front of what used to be our office. And this yield that you see, this pile on the table, is probably not even half of what 4 or 5 trees produce. And if you haven't tried pawpaw, maybe we'll do another foraging event this fall in Fulton, and we'll advertise it and harvest the pawpaws, and you can come try one. Other species like American persimmon, of course, blueberries, which do better up here than they do in Syracuse because the soil up here is more acidic, and service berries and many others. And like I said, a lot of these would, since they're grafted cultivars, will be planted in the Arboretum area. Another requirement of the Arboretum, by the way, is to have labels. So something we should think about too as part of this project. So on the topic of getting people involved, this largely is going to be a volunteer-driven project. We want to have folks from the campus community, students, tree stewards, interested community members helping us out throughout the entire process, helping us plant trees, coming to our events to give us feedback like tonight. So if you want to stay involved and be kept up to date, please leave us your email address at the sign-in sheet, and we will contact you. The schedule for planting is, well, we're going to start this spring, but I think this spring is going to be just a kind of like a kickoff smaller planting, probably maybe focused in the Arboretum. The larger planting will be in the fall, which is more suitable anyway to get students involved, because this year, if we started planting like in late April, especially with you know, the weather, the way it's been, winter might be lingering, it might be a little bit difficult to get student involvement, especially towards the end of the semester. But planting in October, for example, would probably be a lot better. We are thinking, by the way, of doing something for Arbor Day this year. working with Rice Creek, and I think maybe doing like a small planting would be suitable for that, or some kind of event that's related to this project. We do have a dedicated web page for this project, aslf.org/Oswego GLRI. Right, it needs to be updated. We're going to spend the rest of this week and next week updating it with this PowerPoint, as well as everything and the planting plan and everything we talked about. So if you go there tonight or today and you don't see a whole lot of information, don't worry, there's more coming. You can use the QR code here. You can also follow us on Facebook or Instagram. We do post all of our events, so you can stay up to date with that easily by following us. Or you can just email me if you don't use social media. You can just send us an email. And if you really want, I can give you our phone number, but we rarely do that these days. If you want to just call us. So we have here, so we're going to have a little bit of a discussion session, but we also have another QR for giving feedback. So if you think of something later, you can just go to this online form and give us comments, questions. We'll get back to you. If you know somebody who might be interested, who couldn't make it tonight, please feel free to share this with them. And that way they can give their feedback, even though they couldn't make it. And if you think of anything at any point during the process, you can contact us through this form, or you can just email me. And I'll be happy to go back and forth between these two if you didn't get them. So we, tonight is really not only about us presenting the information to you, but we want to get feedback as well from the community. And we've already started doing that with some of the questions we've had and comments. Great. But we really are trying to get a sense of conflicts or things that you think are great about the project that maybe we should enhance or do more of. Is there anything that, you've during the presentation that you thought of that, you think we should know, especially as folks who are not from the campus community? Or maybe there are groups in the community that we could tie into this project. I know that there is a very active Oswego Tree Stewards, whom I think, are there some members here tonight, the Tree Stewards? Okay, great. Maybe there are other groups that, we should rope in to the project that you can think of, or other individuals that might be, interested or useful.
Is soil and water conservation, Joe Charbonnet? Has he been contacted?
Not officially, but yeah, we've got a couple of projects that we'd like to reach out to him about, and yeah, but he hasn't been directly involved in this as of yet.
Is the regional planning board involved?
No, they're not. Yeah.
This may sound like an odd question, but have you been dealing with Quinn spot at all when you planted service berries?
No. Mm-mm.
Interesting.
Yeah, we never had that. We never come across that.
Quinn spot vacation infected. It's a fungal infection for service berry trees. It's wind spread, so
Yeah.
it can be an issue, especially.
There were a lot of natural service berries down by Sheldon Beach, but many of them were taken out when the city did their research. Enhanced.
Have you noticed quince rot locally?
I haven't noticed quince rot locally, but when I'm at home in DC, quince rot is killed almost all of the service berry population near my house, and that means that I don't get any food from the food forest nearby during the service berry mulberry season.
Yeah, oh, that's too bad.
The other, and this might be a better question to Max, but do you think that trees planted around the Glimmerglass Lagoon or by the lake specifically to give people shade or areas to enhance fishing would be relevant to the project?
my response would be to enhance fishing, they probably want to cut back that weed growth first.
Okay.
Then, but
That brings up a good question actually about the need for shade on campus and maybe other areas that need shade trees. Possibly. That you can think of.
Certainly, and I know that this might be odd. But I dislike the open field in the center of campus. When it gets hotter during the summer, but most students aren't here. So periods in which shade is necessary is also when the campus is mostly depopulated.
It's res halls, high rises, those get real hot when students first return to campus.
And I think windbreaks along there are really important too, because of the number of students who are walking. Which is a question all over.
West campus,
Just west east of the gun.
yes, I can decode that.
Okay.
Are there any plans for this year for the permaculture garden? Any additional plans beyond what's already there? Maybe we could figure out a way to better strategize our planting with that.
currently, there's no one for tree planting in that space. I honestly think the opposite. With the utilities underneath the permaculture living lab, we have some trees that their root system kind of worries me, for lack of better words. I think replacement of some trees and establishing trees with a shallow root width would be wise, and any planting really around that our triangle of space there. I know we're dealing with utilities underneath that space.
Mhm.
So being conscious of how deep these roots are going when the trees get more mature.
Yeah.
There wasn't much said about nut varieties. Have you done anything with nut varieties in the agricultural?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We've done hazelnuts quite often in our projects, and I think that's on our list for this planting as well.
We have one in the Arboretum now.
Yeah. We've been experimenting more with pecan actually. Yeah, and they'll survive this far north, but they won't necessarily produce, a mast. But you might get a year where it's like you have an extra long growing season, and maybe you will get some nuts. So I think that would actually be an interesting experiment to actually plant some pecans. Walnut, black walnuts certainly. Chestnuts were, we can't plant American chestnut because because of the disease factor, but we haven't really looked into any of the.
Yes.
Right.
Oh.
No, they
It's the, yeah, and they also have GMO chestnuts too, transgenic ones, which we haven't really looked into that, but those tend to be the two methods that they use for the to try to bring back the chestnut. Butternut is another one that we love, but unfortunately there is butternut canker that's decimating them, and it could be an interesting experiment because you still want to plant some of these trees that have problems with disease, because you might get that one that actually has some resistance genetics. And, but it turns out a lot of the American butternuts in the landscape, what we've discovered is that they hybridize with Japanese walnut. And what we thought are butternuts are actually hybrids. So that's why the ones that are surviving are actually hybrids with Japanese walnut. Yeah. We still actually planted some in one of our recent projects. We planted butternuts just to kind of keep trying. And we did plant pecan also And as far as I know, pecans survived at the Onondaga Nation. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yep.
This is kind of off topic, but I noticed at the beginning of the presentation, because the funding is coming from USDA. Are you expecting that funding to get here?
That's a really good question. We got that question last week too, actually. The short answer is yes. I don't think that we're going to have an issue with this grant, but there's always a little bit of a question mark right now. And I guess my bigger concern is the future of the program. GLRI is pretty popular. It's always enjoyed bipartisan support politically. There's never been anything really controversial about it. You never know. I think for this project, we're okay. I'm, maybe like 80 to 90% sure of that. But future iterations of the GLRI, not so sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a chance that.
Congress might be meeting.
Yeah, yeah. Like Paul said, it's always had bipartisan support. And the funding's already been approved.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was just thinking, focused on trees, when I started thinking about shrubs and comparing like the benefits of a mature tree to a mature shrub, is it a crazy disparity there, or is what I'm talking about just the benefits?
Like stormwater capture.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It is pretty large, yeah. A fully grown oak tree, yeah, it's going to be taking up a lot more water than a shrub. But the shrubs are definitely like, they've got ecological benefit, pollinator benefit, definitely. Not to mention, the food forest benefit as well. Elderberry, that's another one that we've got on the list. I know elderberries have been really popular lately. We bring the elderberry lozenges.
We did actually.
We've got some elderberry lozenges if you want to try an elderberry product, by the way. This is probably an example of an agroforestry product that's, gone mainstream. A lot of people know about it. You can get elderberry products online pretty easily, even like in Wegmans grocery stores. And there is, there is evidence to support that elderberry has antiviral properties, can help prevent and also shorten the duration of cold and flu. So feel free if you want to come try elderberry product.
They are native here.
Yeah, yep, they're native, yep.
And that would be something in terms of wind rates, I think having shrubs. As part of the wind rate along the lake.
Yeah. I was almost thinking that there needs to be a three-dimensional.
Everything's, all the snow and wind questions.
Yeah, yeah. What's that? What's the soil look like? There on the coast where you said there's a lot of wind behind the dorms. Is it, I'm assuming it's pretty sandy, or is it? It's not, okay. Let's say there's a ton of land, sure. Okay.
Did you say that was?
I would say that what there isn't a whole lot, at least behind. Right. Oh, there's not. Okay.
I'm gonna say my grandmother had elderberries. Okay, and it was, I remember as a kid having elderberry sauce and.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very popular, so.
Yeah.
Natural remedy.
I think behind Lakeside Dorm, there's like stands of roses and different kinds of shrubs along the lake there.
Is that multi-floor rose or?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if it's multiple.
Does the lakeshore behind the residence halls get use?
Well, everything west.
Yeah, west of there.
West of there, okay,
Oh, yeah, I used a lot.
yeah. Are there any kind of like official rules about like swimming and whatnot, or?
It's just a restaurant.
You're on your own.
You're on your own, yeah. Mhm.
It's just, it's not a sandy lake shore.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, Kristen?
Can you go back to your map with the
Sure.
things? I was curious what that seed experiment was. Does anyone
Oh, yeah.
know?
Yeah, that's, it's a archaeological experiment site.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if that's active.
Archaeological?
Yeah.
So is that active?
I haven't observed. that
It used to
was
be.
active.
I don't know if it is right now, but I don't know what's happening. If there even is an archaeology class.
Is that plus a weather station, I think there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's-
I don't know if, it's being used by classes anymore. I've never seen anybody out there when I'm walking. I've seen students working around that area.
I know that some places on that map get more like people traffic in the great areas than others, so like, for example, like B gets a little less people traffic than, like that. Like, how do you make sure that, like, when the trees are in their sapling stage, that students don't like, tip them over or something, cause I know that.
There's a lot of deer there.
Oh, that's another thing, yeah, our whole campus is deer
deer, yeah.
haven.
A lot of protection. You could put fencing around it, deer fence and just stakes, just so people know where they are, yeah.
We do have funding for that.
Yeah.
Two things. One, if there's any consideration for like community outreach and output or input, maybe suggest reaching out to the Oswego Public Library. They tend to have a lot of good involvement from local events, and they have large community space that's downstairs, so it might be very receptive to holding something like that. And then I just like to point this out, like it's somewhere right around B, I want to say. I think one of the things that I've liked that just somehow exists that has, it's not thriving, but it exists on campus, is that there's like some apple trees that are in B. And obviously we'd be looking, I wouldn't think that we'd want to be putting apple trees on campus because there's a lot that goes into growing and maintaining apple trees. But the fact that apple trees are kind of growing in that area there, maybe that there are things that would help complement or would do just as well based on that area, knowing that there's this different type of tree that's growing there that anywhere else on campus.
Those apple trees are a woman in town who was 80. Her family owned part of down where Mahara Hall is and stuff, and it was, they grew through it, they had an apple orchard. And there still are some trees, and some of them are just hanging on to where the erosion is coming, they're very hardy, they hang right on the west campus, right on the shoreline, on the bluff.
There's part of the old orchard.
Yeah.
Other users of that, people pick apples there and that might also be interested in some other food forest opportunities in the area? Yes, oh yeah.
At least it's in an area where there is some green space, because along the road, there's no pedestrian friendly area except those green spaces. And at least there is enough of that between the road and the shoreline where that does exist. But it's also, the tree's kind of like on the ledge itself. And so,
Yeah. And what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I was gonna say that there are also three apple trees on lakeside dorms, and all along the coastline area, there are riverside grapes or riverbank grapes.
Should do a foraging walk one of these days. Any thoughts on programming so that could be related to this kind of project down the road?
In the village houses especially, everybody's got a kitchen, so with the different fruits and whatnot, we're having some sort of resource or event on harvesting them and then using them to make food.
The village houses, are those on the shoreline there?
No, down here in the southwest.
Oh, okay.
Would be
And Dan,
Is
to
that right
follow
there?
up on your point, about the villages and the unique living situation, that space in the middle, how is that utilized?
for the first week in the fall where we throw frisbees once or twice. But yeah, I would love to see trees, because you can probably keep them to the side while still having a lot of open.
Yeah.
Area for whatever recreation. And it would shade the houses.
Kate from Matt, I don't know, you were doing some tapping with maple trees, I think. Yeah, is that planning to go on this spring again?
Yeah,
So,
go, you go.
we've expanded our sugar bush off campus, it's adjacent to Fallbrook. So in terms of in this picture right here, there are no sugar bushes that we're actively tapping. Sugar bush adjacent to Rice Creek, so if we could just expand the map, imagine, that's where we harvest ourselves first.
Yeah, and you would want to expand out the main campus then.
Oh, it's funny. We started actually on the main campus way back when, between behind the President's House and then also the quad behind Colton Hall. But I think now that we have the storage space, I think it's more than enough.
More economical.
It is, definitely.
In terms of history, there was a time when they would tap the maples and use the snow from our campus to basically a festival of celebrating the maple harvest. Snow cones with maple syrup. At President's House. When Sheldon.
And when the snow is there.
And snow.
Manageable.
I'd suggest another campus and history and community building event being as the incoming classes, planting a tree in honor of the class or even maybe graduating class.
Is that an event that happens every year?
Sorry?
Is that an event that happens every year?
Yeah, so the freshman incoming class will have a week on campus before anybody else shows up or any of the students show up. So in that time, there's a lot of events happening. So having maybe one of the days being that sort of event.
Oh, yeah.
When that will recruit people for October, they like it, they think it's fun to do it during orientation. Freshmen will jump on board for planting in October.
Yeah. What have the tree stewards done much on campus?
We were part of the Arboretum project with Rice Creek and Sustainability Office. Actually, I think there were some people in the tree stewards who discovered the brass plate on Lotus Hall, or Moreland Hall, I guess it was, that celebrated the Centennial Arboretum, and nobody knew anything about it.
Oh, really?
With the help of Kate. I'm sorry. My brain. We were able to get the Arboretum resurrected again, which is really cool. Because there were like 84 organizations highlighted on the brass plate that had contributed to the Centennial Arboretum in 1963. Nobody knew anything about it because West Campus was built after that, and everybody was focused on West Campus. Now we're resurrecting it.
Yeah, that's great.
How many trees do we have now, Kate? Any Arboretum, Max, how many additional trees?
Unique varieties, we're just under 50, and that's a total, we're just under 100.
Oh, we have another question.
I was just gonna say that a concern I've had, campus, is that there are a lot of areas that do have mature trees, it's very nice. But, you know, trees only last so long, and there's no natural growth of saplings, you know, on them and such. And so it would be nice if there was thought put towards, you know, planting trees in areas where there are already mature trees, so that one day when those trees die, it won't become just, you know.
Yeah. It's like an ongoing program of tree planting and replacing the dead trees.
Sure.
Yeah.
Instead of just fixing the areas and new areas that need to be fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the application you're making for reforestation on campus.
Sure, yes, we can mention that. So the DEC has a community reforestation, call for proposals out right now. And we've been in conversation with the tree advisory board to like working with our partners in the United States. And we're looking for planting sites on our campus and the city and the county. So we're in the brainstorming draft phase of that. But it's worthy of mention because we should think holistically about this and understand what sort of work can be done within the guardrails of this project, and then how this next project can complement and maybe fill in some of the gaps in terms of wants we might have that can't be satisfied under these constraints, but could be satisfied under other constraints. So I think a lot of this feedback, although some of this feedback might not be immediately applicable to this project, I think having that feedback and then seeing if some of those gaps can be satisfied through this future pursuit would be right on.
Yeah, so his point about having a tour forested area, yes, and planting is really part of that project as well. That's yeah. Great.
Like establishing an uneven aged kind of forest, yeah. Suitable for certain areas, for sure. Yeah, and we've been talking about that. Yeah, that application is due in just a couple weeks. Yeah.
Did I hear you say earlier in response to a gentleman over here on my left that anticipating a 90% success rate might be reasonable?
Yeah, generally in our experience, yeah. And it depends on, we've had quite a number of experiences with partners, some of whom provided follow through and others who didn't, and we've learned some hard lessons from that. So it all depends on the maintenance and watering the trees and during those first few crucial years. Not mowing them over with a lawnmower, that helps too. We've had some issues with that. Yeah. So if everybody's
experience I had with GLRI was with the county did a 200 tree planting. And due to a number of causes, fewer than 25% of them are alive today.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I think we saw as tree stewards was that the trees that were delivered from the nursery were in horrible condition. Severely root bound, and it filled up, and it too deep at the nursery.
Yeah.
And there was no incoming inspection, no incoming QC on that. So the county kind of got stuck with those trees. As you know.
Yeah.
One thing you gotta pay attention to.
All of that, yeah, requires fine tuning the whole process and getting good stock and good maintenance partners who will follow through.
Well, they actually purchased these from the county did purchase them from a nursery that was touting the Missouri gravel method. And if you've seen any of those trees, they come with these massive fine hair root balls. And none of these fit that description. These fit the description of a nursery that closed 4 years ago and somebody went in and dug all of them up and sold them to the county. So you have to have a good level of incoming quality control.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, city of Fulton is looking into starting their own Missouri gravel bed nursery. And we submitted an application for them to get some funding for it. We didn't get it, but there's a ton of energy and interest down there in urban forestry. And also getting middle school students involved in helping to like maintain the nursery. And so there actually could be a, source of some Missouri gravel bed trees coming in the future nearby.
You guys doing Missouri gravel bed nursery growing tree.
I don't think so. Well, they partnered with OEC quite a bit, and OEC has conserved around them. I don't know if they use it. I know it's relatively new, like within the past couple of years, but I've never seen it grow anything with it.
Yeah.
I see sources of trees from quite a few different places, so. The question, I don't know.
The only Missouri gravel bed grower that I know of locally is in Pompey. Rare Earth Nursery. I don't know if you've heard of them. Small operation.
Rare,
Rare Earth, yeah.
they have some experience, good experience.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. They have a nice facility there. What, the tree stores got trees from them? From Rare Earth?
Yeah.
We've recommended them to several people, and the trees that get delivered. Excellent. Not only that, they even came back a year later, and gave us some breeder to replace one that did die.
Oh.
They go lawnmower killed it, and they replaced it anyway. It's wonderful out this.
Rare Earth.
Oh, really?
Anything related to research opportunities? I don't know if we were talking earlier, Kristen, about the restoration grant and how that can potentially give us. Do you think that this project might lend itself to, as far as the design goes, research opportunities? Oh, yeah. I'm asking if this project might lend itself, as far as the design goes, to research opportunities for faculty, experiment station style kind of plantings.
It's still a little hard.
It's still hard to hear me? Oh, really?
Yeah. If you're aiming that way, microphone picks up. Anyway.
Yeah.
Good question. We could definitely float that by like biological sciences and see who might have research opportunities related to that, maybe
Mhm.
related to insect pollinators or birds. Something like that.
Yeah. Do the alpha beds, do they have any kind of program associated with them? Do the alva beds on campus have any kind of program associated with them, research program? Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Sorry, I stepped back from lab, so I missed almost everything. I apologize for that. Question was, are there research possibilities with the
Yeah.
layout you've got up here? Is that the question?
Yeah, maybe it's, because we're proposing maybe like some bur oaks to complement the alva beds. Is there a way for us to incorporate any kind of research interest into this design?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I'm always looking for projects with my students that can somehow connect to the campus and connect to the region and ecological problems as a whole. So I see lots of potential here. Off the top of my head, I don't have any ideas right now, but I think about it some more and for sure. I mean, just basic monitoring of how the trees are doing and having students, visit these trees and collect data on, again, their general survival, their health. You're concerned about, what's going to be efficacy of planting. Those are sorts of things that we could easily set up in like an ecology class for a project, for the class project. Hey, this is our semester project. We're going to work with these tree plantings around campus and gather data to let people know how they're doing and quantify that. I think there's lots of potential. well, if there's any opportunity to figure out any sort of research that can be incorporated into the Great Lake Institute and the National Marine Sanctuary that was just established, and see if there's some sort of thing that, you know, connects with those things.
Yeah.
Especially as it relates to either Lake Ontario or Great Lakes in general, and interest by the federal government to figure those things out.
Yeah. By the way, if you came in a little bit late, would you mind, maybe Professor, if you don't mind signing the sign-in sheet, and we can keep you in the loop and. Times it's going on. So it's been over an hour now. Any final comments, thoughts? We can keep talking. If you think of something later, you can always contact us through the form, email. Well, I guess that wraps it up. Thank you, everybody, for giving us your time and attention tonight. And don't forget to try some elderberry lozenges.